And away we go. Alright, so again I'm going to cover what we did last time since it's been quite a while. Last time we talked about the use of PDF folders. For you guys that are maybe new here or not familiar with the PDFs, there is a PDF folder under pretty much anywhere that you would have a planned drawing. Make sure you use the PDF folder. Always create a folder inside of that with the date that you're creating the PDF, and then throw your PDF in there. Reason for that is we always want to keep documentation of what the project or what the sheets look like at each step. So that happened today. Juan came up to me and said, you know, where's this bid set for Hamishaw? Well, he found it, fortunately, but if we had organized that a little bit better and kept better records of those PDFs, it would have been a lot easier for anybody to find it. So be sure you're using the PDF folders accurately. Also use the archive folder. Anytime, you guys are pretty good about archiving your files, just make sure you do it in the specific way of doing it. The wrong way would be to have the date and then the file name. Always put the file name first, right? You copy your file and then append it with the date after your file. So you can always go EXTO, because what are you interested in? You're interested in recovering your EXTO. Well, here's your XTO files and here's the dates available. So make sure you have the file name and then append it with the date that you archive it. Last time we talked a little bit about some template updates, some styles and settings, some new templates as well. You know, you no longer have the EXTO FTO file. You now have an EXTO and an EXTO C3 file. So it's kind of, your templates mirror what your file name should be. We added some point codes so that point codes come in correctly. Telephone becomes telco, because a lot of times we don't really distinguish between telco, cable, TV. Sometimes it all gets lumped to telco. So kind of be aware of that. You're going to start seeing that change in the template. Things are just going to be organized as telco. Some pipe network style changes. When you create a pipe network in your plan view, if it's assumed, it's just going to be a single line for your center line. If it's a potholed, data and you select that style, you're going to see the center line and the walls. So it'll kind of help you identify what potholes have been assumed versus potholed. Talked a little bit about just efficiency and elevating our game. We had some conversations about slowness of files, making sure we're utilizing the files and the Civil 3D data correctly. We talked about the EXTO drawings, your EXTO and your EXTO C3 file, what should be in each. If this is what your EXTO looks like, you've got major issues, because this actually has all kinds of break lines and Civil 3D data that you don't want being XREF'd into every single drawing. Your EXTO is an image, more or less. It's your backdrop of what the existing topography looks like. You're not actually building your surface in it, so you don't need all that break line data. Your files are going to be a lot faster if you streamline them and delete and remove all the Civil 3D break lines from those files. So make sure you're handling your EXTOs correctly. Talked a little bit about just kind of knowing your file size, what size file you're anticipating. It's always good to have your XREF window open so you can see the file size. Make sure that it makes sense. Do a sanity check on your file size. If you start seeing it get bloated, hey, you know, something might be happening to my file. Maybe it's a good time to purge. Maybe it's a good time to audit. We also talked about regapps a little bit and how to kind of handle those. I don't think I sent out the update to install regapps. Who has the regapps program installed on their machine? Anybody? All right, a couple people. It's a program that actually purges all the regapps from your entire project directory. So if you notice regapps becoming an issue, please let me know and we can install that program. I'll try to send out the update today. It's just a simple batch file that you double-click and it will install on your program, on your computer. We had some block updates that we discussed, particularly with storm drain and some annotation for the SDG&E groups. We'll cover those a little bit more today. You also have defined blocks for all your existing electrical manholes, so you guys don't have to worry about those layers and those styles and line types. You actually have blocks for all the existing manholes and vault structures. Tool palettes. The tool palettes got completely redone, basically. So if you're using tool palettes, you may notice some changes there. We've also got them separated into some groups to load. We covered this, but hopefully you're all using this, where you can load the palette group and it'll load exactly like I want it for you guys to see. They're precise. There's one for the civil group, there's one for T&D, there's one for gas. So make sure you're using the correct tool palette. It will kind of speed things up for you. And we'll cover that a little bit more today as well. Talked a little bit about dimensions. There really shouldn't be a need to override your dimension. So don't get in the practice of overriding the actual dimension. Everything that we draw here should be in a real-world coordinate system and real-world dimensions and lengths. So if you're finding yourself overriding dimensions, check your drawing first. Make sure you're drawing it accurately.
How can you add additional text into that dimension without overriding?
Good question. Let me draw a dimension that isn't 12,000 feet long. All right, so there's a dimension. Jeez. There's a dimension, right? We can just simply edit that dimension. If you arrow to the end, you can type whatever you want afterwards as well. So you don't really have to do much. Just type after the dimension. Easy enough? We discussed line types a little bit. The innovation there was we have short line type definitions now. So if you're doing little laterals that are only, let's say, 2 inches long in your plan view, right? And your line type has, let's say, sewer. It has the S every 4 inches. It's not going to show on that lateral, right? So there's now a short line type that displays it every 2 inches or 1.5 inches, I forget. So those are now available for you guys to use for those cases where you have short little segments of lines and you need the line type to show. Just change it to the short. And you can manage that through creating some separate layers and that kind of stuff. Just note that those short UTs are not preloaded in the template. So if you need them, you're going to have to load them from the LT file. And the last thing we discussed last time was Sheet Set Manager. This is becoming something that we've reiterated several times. We actually talked about it the last time too. Closed off the session, and last time we began the session with Sheet Set. So Sheet Set is more than just a plotting utility. It's great for plotting your entire sheet set, right? Don't get me wrong. But you can also use it for all your match lines, all your C sheet 5 for continuation. That should all be tied to your sheet set. That should not be just regular text. It should be a field reading your sheet set. So please be sure that you're doing that. For the gas group, as I think I mentioned to most people here, but we are going to change the way that the title block is done. It's no longer going to be block attributes. They're actually going to be fields reading your sheet set. So all that title block information, that's going to be populated from your sheet set. And there's great opportunity to do that office-wide for the other groups as well, so that you're not managing all these block attributes and 20 different files and all this stuff. We just have it read one source, and that source is going to be your sheet set. So those of you who aren't comfortable with sheet sets, you're going to really need to become comfortable utilizing sheet sets. And hopefully everybody's using sheet sets, right?
Are you going to go through that for the gas?
Yeah, for the gas group, we have a technical meeting next week, so we'll cover that in detail. Jarrod came up with that block, so he'll kind of unveil that for the gas group. But just know that if there's some data that you want to be controlled, we can start controlling it via custom fields in the sheet set. And sheet set begins at plotting. We expand it to handle our sheet numbers, right? We don't want sheet numbers on each sheet being just regular text. That should be a field from our sheet set, match lines, and now we can populate all kinds of custom properties. So you're really going to see this grow here. So become proficient using the sheet set. So that's the old stuff. Now on to the fun. First topic, zone in. Civil 3D is great in that it automates so many things for you guys, right? You'll admit that it's made your drafting life a lot easier. However, your data is only as good as the information you give it. I think we've taken some things for granted here, and one of those things is the coordinate system. By default, if you use the template, your drawing is going to be in California, but it's going to be zone 6, right? Because that's where this office is located. If you're doing work outside of zone 6, be sure to change your zone. You know, the gas group, we're doing a lot of work in zone 5. You know, if you're working outside of zone 6, be sure to change your zone, all right? Can't stress that enough. If you don't change your zone, what happens is when you start importing your points are going to be miles and miles off from their actual location. So setting your zone is probably the single-handedly most important step when you go to set up your project, all right? Keep in mind, this is more than just your drawing. It is also for your survey database. So if you create a survey database, the survey database is set for zone 6 as default. If you need to do work outside of zone 6, be sure to change that setting in your survey database as well. All right, that's become a big issue the last couple months here. We've had to completely redo projects because the files and the survey database were set up in the wrong zone. All right, so that's a lot of added hours, a lot of wasted budget on projects just because of one simple step. So bottom line, don't take things for granted. Go through the steps. You know, the first step when you open a drawing is, what zone is my project in? So if I asked anybody in this room, current project you're working on, Rick? Zone 6. You should know the zone for every project that you're working on.
I have a question.
Yes.
What about for, let's say you get a project that crosses the zone, like between Orange County and Los Angeles County?
Ooh, that's actually a really good question.
How's that handled?
I don't know. I will actually have to get back to you on that. I don't know actually how that is handled. That's a very good question.
I've thought about maybe go to UTM in the past, but I don't know if that would work.
You can use the zone usually that has the most benefits.
Yeah, I actually don't know the impacts of that. We'll have to research that. I think you'd use the one that's majority of your project, but not entirely sure. You'd probably rely on your surveyors. How many people are aware that your surveyors actually tell you what zone your project's in? Anybody aware of that? Where's that information located?
Survey cover sheet.
Correct. So if you're unaware or you need to double check, go to the survey cover sheet. All right. Your surveyors mark what zone your project is in, and that's something that we take for granted. How many of us go back to the survey cover sheets? Those aren't just for surveyors, guys. Those are their tool of conveying the information to the office staff. So be sure you're checking out that survey data information. It can be quite helpful. Again, like I've covered in I think the last 8 Lunch and Learns, file etiquette. A couple of different things that I want to touch on. How do we handle layers and the proper technique and the difference? The difference between freeze and display. Can anybody tell me the difference between when you freeze a layer and when you turn off a layer?
It's frozen, it doesn't get regenerated at all. It's ignored.
When would you use layer freeze?
When you don't want to see it.
When you never want to see it,
Yeah.
right? When do you turn layers on and off?
For clarity sometimes.
Yeah, to clean up your drafting, right? Temporarily, you want to turn things off so you can better design what you're working on. All right, so be sure that you're doing that correctly. Don't freeze layers left and right. Freeze is when you permanently don't want to see them in your file, whether it's a design file or a plan and profile file. That's when you freeze layers, when you no longer want to see that information. So a lot of our construction lines, those layers should be frozen. But, you know, curbs and sidewalks, you should pretty much never freeze those, right? You can turn them on and off, but don't freeze them. It's that important planimetric information. The other thing dealing with file etiquette, the hard set of layer colors or objects, the hard set colors and line types. Make sure that you're not hard setting entities inside your drawing. Everything should be controlled by your layer manager. So the worst thing that you can see is somebody drawing a line like this on layer 0, right? But then they come in here and change the color like this. So now I don't really even expect this line to be on layer 0, right? Because it's green, and I know layer 0 should be white. So if you're in the practice of doing this, please stop it. This is kind of AutoCAD 101 and file etiquette. If you run across a file that has a bunch of things set like this, one of the most powerful commands in all of AutoCAD, in my opinion, set by layer. I use this command almost weekly at my former company. I'd receive files from an architect, and architects are infamous for hard setting colors, embedding blocks, and that third nested block has a line that's hard set to red, which would, or color 10, right? The last thing you'd want is to have something plot color 10 in palette A, right? So the set by layer command, you can select everything in your drawing, hit yes twice, and it's going to go through and set everything back to by layer. So my line, it's back to by layer. So if I click on this line, by layer. All right. So be sure to break those habits if you're in those habits. You may find it necessary to draw something hard set if you want to see some differences or something like that, but the better practice is to create a temporary layer, set that layer to a weird color, you know, like a cyan or something you can see, and then once you're done, just change your layers, right? So be sure you're not hard setting things. Asking questions. Engineering is a team effort, guys. Something I stressed in our gas group meeting was we're here for one another. You know, use the resources available to you to better yourself, right? So I'm really good at AutoCAD, right? But prior to coming here, I didn't know a thing about gas. So I'm going to try to glean as much information from Christine, Blake, Sergio, and now Garrett as possible, right? So use those around you to better yourselves, right? Be it AutoCAD, the specific engineering discipline that you're involved in. You have so many resources. A company's most valuable possession is its employees, all right? So don't sit in your cubicle all day staring at your screen, right? I know sometimes we need to have that type of tunnel vision to get our product out, but use those around you to better yourself, all right? Don't sit there struggling or second guessing how to do something. If you don't know how to do it, if it's AutoCAD related, come see me. If it's really project specific, see your project lead, your project manager. And it's not just, let's say, red lines, right? When you're doing red lines, if the person who did those red lines, if you don't understand what's being asked of you, go ask that person that did those red lines. Ask for clarification. Don't just blindly make changes not knowing or understanding the concept and the reason behind it. Make sure you guys understand what is going on. All right? Plotting. In the new templates, this got revised about a week ago. Tried to make plotting a little bit easier for you guys in terms of our 22 by 34 sheet sizes and PDFs and making that just a little bit smoother for you. So you'll recognize that in the new templates once you start using them. The page size got changed to 22 by 34. So it'll be a little bit cleaner for you when you're making PDFs. LISP routines. Hopefully everybody's familiar with LISP routines, right? How many people use a LISP routine on a daily basis? Are you aware that you're using LISP routines on a daily basis? A lot of our commands are actually LISP routines. So like when you create a viewport, MV, that's actually a LISP routine that we have automatically loaded for you guys. When you create MV for a viewport, you'll actually notice that it switched. I was actually in model space, right? When I just typed MV, I actually switched to my sheet space, paper space, and I'm ready to go. What you'll notice here is my layer also changed. It's no longer 0 layer, it's -- VP. So every time you actually create a viewport, you're actually using a LISP routine to automate a lot of this process. If this wasn't a LISP routine, you would have been told, hey, you can't create a viewport in model space. Then you would have had to change to paper space. Then you'd come in here, create a viewport, and your viewport would be on whatever layer was current. If you look, this is on BP layer. So you guys are using list routines on a daily basis, even if you're not aware of them.
Does that also lock the view, and that viewport is all part of the list routine?
It does not, just because normally when you're creating the viewport, you still need to set your scale, your zoom factor. You also may want to change your pan, so it does not lock the viewport automatically. However, there is a list routine to lock all your viewports, and that's available. It's under the San Diego LISP folder, so look for it. It's very easy. That folder is pretty well organized. For instance, that one is called viewport _ lock all viewports. So I've tried to organize those in the San Diego folder so you guys can easily find them. You know, anything related to a block is going to be titled block _ and then kind of a description of what it does. So those list routines are organized in a fashion where you should be able to use and find them pretty easily. For the list routines that you fall in love with and use on a regular basis, add them to your startup suite. Right? AP for app load. This right here, your startup suite, if you find that you're constantly using a list routine and you don't want to have to go through and load it each time you use it, just add it here. Add it to this list, and then it'll auto load every time you open AutoCAD. So some new list routines for you via user input. And this is what I rely on you guys for, is to go, hey, it'd be really helpful if we had a tool to do something like this. So this is just simple text, right? I'm going to copy these straight down so they all have the same insertion point. And then I'm going to change the justification on these. This one's going to be center, and this one's going to be right. All right, so we've got three different text items. I want to convert those to M-text. How would you do that? Well, there's a command called text to M-text, right? Or which is found in the Express tools, right? When you do that, I want to convert all three of them, right? Now it's one M-text. I want them all individual, right? We now have a list routine to do that. So, upload, San Diego folder, right? What is it? What entity am I modifying? Text. All right, so text. All right, here are the, and what is it called? This one here, text. Text 1 to M-text justification. So what this is actually going to do is it's going to create multiple text out of these one-line texts. T1MJ. And then I can select multiple objects. Each one gets converted independently to M-text. And the cool thing, it keeps the justification as well. All right? So that was the whole point of that, making these different, is that it actually keeps the justification of your text as well. So that's a pretty cool thing. Why would you ever want to use this? It's a lot of times where you want to add masking, right? So rather than drawing a wipeout around these, wouldn't it be cool if you could convert all your text to M-text and then simply add text masking, because now it's M-text and you can add text masking to them, right? So that's kind of what the workflow was. Is we had all this text, we wanted it to be masked. How would I go about that? Well, here's a list routine that will convert it to M-text, and then we can just tell it, use text masking, all right? So there's some powerful lists out there for you. Blake had one, we were editing title blocks for the gas group, and the current title block has a bunch of block attributes, right? And since it's a block, we'd have to make those attribute edits on every single sheet, right? So we came up and said, hey, there's got to be a better way, right? The last thing I want to do is spend the next hour changing layout tabs and editing the same line of text, right, in my title block. So there's actually a list routine to do that now. So upload, what is it? It's a block at mod suite, attribute modification suite. And this will actually give you a lot of different things you can do, but one of the things that it will do is you can edit attributes globally in your file. So it will actually pick up the attribute and change it in every instance of that block. All right, so that could be very useful for title blocks. It could be useful for all kinds of blocks that you guys use that have attributes. So keep that in mind.
Assuming they're in the same drawing file.
Assuming that they're in the same drawing file. But it will handle all layout tabs, which is kind of a critical point to make, because a lot of LISP routines aren't able to handle individual layout tabs. It will go globally through your layout tabs as well. The next one is actually kind of a custom one that I came up with to help our workflows. It's basically to be able to redefine blocks inside your drawing, all right? So again, this actually got developed to kind of support some workflows in the gas group. But let's say you're using a block, be it an elbow that we're using, text annotation, whatever your block may be. Let's say you're using a template that's from 2 years ago, right? And that block has now changed, and you want to redefine that block in your drawing. This will actually do it for you. The only way to really do it natively inside AutoCAD is to reinsert that block from the source, and then it'll tell you, hey, do you want to redefine it? Yes. You'd have to do that for every single block, right? So what we did for the gas group is we actually changed all the layers of our blocks, right? Because before we had to do them one way, and now they need to be on a separate layer. So we got a bunch of drawings out there with 50, 60 blocks in them, and the line work inside those blocks are on wrong layers. So we want to update all those blocks. We now have LISP to do that. So you'll notice that there's the generic one here where we can actually customize it to do whatever we want. But there's two other ones here. For the annotation blocks for SDG&E, specifically in the distribution design group, this will actually update all your blocks for your annotation. It will bring in the new definition, and I'll cover some of that because those blocks have changed for you. This one here will go out to the server, grab the recent, most current blocks, and redefine them in your drawing. All right, and I'll do any of the blocks in your tool palette. So any fitting, any gas device, that will actually update all those blocks now with SoCal Gas layer styles and settings. All right, so we can now redefine blocks, multiple blocks at a time. That's about 60 blocks in the gas one. It's about 20 in the annotation block. The minute you load it and type the command, it will take a minute because keep in mind it's going out to a server, grabbing however many number of blocks and reinserting them into your drawing. So your computer will hang up for 30 seconds to a minute. So allow it some space to kind of process and crunch all that, but it will happen in the background a little bit. I came up with 2 LISP routines to add some polar angles and incremental angles. So if you're into polar tracking, please see me on those. They're pretty neat to add some angles. Those are useful if you're laying out electrical lines or gas lines or water lines and you need to deflect your pipe at certain angles. Those LISP routines kind of help you walk through that process. There's also a LISP routine to delete blocks in your drawing. So let's say you have a certain logo or stamp that appears on every layout sheet of your drawing, right? It could be a permit stamp or any type of stamp or block in your drawing that you've added, and you want to delete that block from your drawing. Say it's no longer applicable. Let's say it was like a preliminary for construction block, right? Instead of going to each layout tab, deleting each individual block, there's now a LISP routine to physically delete and remove that block from your drawing. So it eliminates all that drafting. So if you ever need to delete a block from your drawing, let me know. We can load that one up. The next one deals with revision clouds. Revision cloud, multiple objects. When you go and create a revision cloud, you can only do one object at a time, right? Hopefully you guys know that you can create revision clouds from polylines, right? You type rev cloud, give it a reasonable arc length, and then you'd notice you can either start drawing one, right? Or you can draw it from an object. So you can convert a polyline to a revision cloud. Now let's say you want to do that. You've got multiple ones drawn, right? Oops. If you type RevCloud, go to Object, and you try to window, you can't. There's now a list routine that will let you do that. So again, upload, revision cloud, multiple objects. Like any routine here, you will see this line here after you load it. Tells you what command to use to activate the Lisp. So RCMO for revision cloud, multiple objects. Tell it what size of arc length you want to use. We'll go 0.3. Ooh, I will need to fix that. We'll go 1. It'll ask you the style. Let's do fancy calligraphy, right? And then I can actually select multiple at the same time. And then I can change the style. You'll notice that this one kind of goofed up, right? So the only warning with this list routine is your polyline length needs to be longer than your arc length, right? Since I'm in paper space, my scale's kind of screwed up, so I'd want to use something a little bit smaller on my arc length or make a bigger polyline. All right, so know that you can now create multiple revision clouds all at the same time rather than having to do individually. The main reason for that list routine is to create trees, our tree symbol for EXTOs, right? We got a file from an error list that didn't have that defined. It's just a polyline, right? We need it to look like a tree or shrub. So, hey, this list routine can do that all in one fell swoop, all right? So things like that you guys encounter that, hey, let's look for a better way, right? We want to minimize the amount of hand drafting that we all do.
That's good. I like that. Limits of brush is always a problem chasing.
And keep in mind that revision clouds become a whole lot better in future releases of AutoCAD. They become intelligent.
I like that.
All right. SDG&E distribution design annotation blocks. In your tool palette, this one's a little messy, but you now have 3 options, 3 categories for your annotation blocks. You'll find regular blocks, just, like here, and then you'll find ones with wipeouts, and then you'll also find one with text mask. All right, so let's look at the difference a little bit. So let's compare the DBL landing left. And like anything in the tool palette, takes a minute, right? So there's my first one. That has nothing, that's just a regular one. We'll use the text mask one. And then we'll use the wipeout one. So these are all dependent upon what your particular project manager wants and expects your drawing to look like. All right, so there's our 3 blocks. Oh, I used the wrong one. DBL wipeout left. All right, so the differences between these. Let's throw a hatch in here so we can see the difference. And of course, we'll use a solid hatch, right? And of course, we'll send it behind, right? Or send it back. So here's the differences between your 3 blocks. This one is just text. There's no wipeout, no mask, nothing going on. You're going to see right through it. This one here, this is your text mask. So as you change each line of text, this is a little bit more complicated to use, quite frankly. I would use the wipeout one whenever possible, because you'll notice you can't edit this attribute here like you normally would. You actually have to go into the multi-line editor and change things here. So these are a little bit less friendly to use, the text mask ones. The one thing that's nice about them is it's only going to block out the area that you need, right? So it's going to follow each line of text, right? Now a quick shortcut to help use these blocks. You wouldn't want to double click on it, go to your attribute, go here to open the multi-line editor, right? Hopefully everybody's aware of this. Hold down your control key, double click on it, it'll bring you right into your multi-line editor. Then you can edit it.
Do you have any restrictions with spaces or any symbols?
So this one does. This one does not behave well with special characters in terms of the line spacing. So this actually became an issue, and kind of the reason why we decided to kind of also implement a text map or a wipeout one. This style is probably fine. I don't know what style we're using, but becomes an issue where the special characters can kind of lead into the next line and they start getting wiped out. They get cut off. So to tell you the truth, I'm not a huge fan of the text mask one, which is why we then turned around and developed the wipeout one. So what happened was, I'm not going to point any fingers to people, but we probably had hundreds of these blocks in the drawing, and they were asked, the drafter was asked to, I want a wipeout around that text, right? So we had people drawing polylines, typing wipeout, then clicking on this, send it back. Oh man, now I got to send this one back, right? You multiply that amount of time, that many clicks, by 100 annotation callouts. How much time did I just waste? Quite a bit. Then the worst thing is you go to plot, you turn off your wipeout frames, right? And then next week, drafter B opens this file and is told to move text around, right? They forget their wipeout frame is turned off, so then they start moving the text without the wipeout frame. Then drafter A returns to the project and goes, what did you do to my project? Now we got to start all over the process, right? Wouldn't it be much better if the wipeout block was built into your annotation block? Well, that's exactly what this guy does. So now you have a wipeout block or wipeout built inside this dynamic block. And that wipeout has dynamic properties. So let's say you change the number of lines of text, right, to 4. That wipeout changes accordingly. Let me delete this guy. Right? So that wipeout is going to adjust automatically to the number of text, and then this script here is going to control the width or length of your wipeout. So as your text grows, and notice this one is just regular text, so you can make attributes here as well. You don't have to go into the multi-line. So now my text goes out there. We'd want to move this so it's out there as well. All right? So those are the new blocks for you.
So if you drag it to the side, does it make it a left or a right? And changes?
That is a great question, and that's actually the very next bullet point on my list. If you look at your tool space, you'll realize that there is a right and left call out for all these blocks, right? So the one that we're looking at here is a left, right? Because the text goes to the left. If you want one to mirror, let's say, and be on the other side, do not mirror this, all right? This has been happening inside the group, and it's a practice that has to stop. Do not mirror these. There's a reason why they're developed left and right. Deals with the text justification, all right? So it's very important that you don't just mirror this. Your text isn't going to be all lined up correctly. So instead, bring in the right block. No pun intended. Okay, pun intended.
You're right.
I'm funny. I'm funny. So be sure to bring in the right block and use the right block. And don't hit F1 again.
I think you can set your F1 to do the escape.
Yeah, it's just not on this one. It is on my computer, but not on this presentation laptop. So be sure to use the correct block, be it left or right. Do not go in this one and mirror it to get to have it go on the right.
And if you drag it to the right, will it switch to a right?
No. Do not do that. All right. Make sure you actually just use the right blocks. All right. There's a reason why they're right and left, so please use the right block or the correct block. All right. So the wipeout blocks, those are the new ones for you. Ask your PM, but I'm pretty sure they're going to tell you to use the wipeout block. Scott, you had a question?
Yeah, maybe it's just because the masking, you know how each individual line had the wipeout follow it. Was that the function that was making it not work properly? Could you apply that to your wipeout one rather than just one massive wipeout?
So the way the wipeout works is it's based off of a polyline. So I mean, I could have an individual grip for each line of text. We could do that, but I don't know if that's necessarily accomplishing what ultimately you guys want to do.
Yeah.
If you get into situations like this one, where you've got 2 lines of text, or 3 characters and then 20 characters, you don't necessarily want your wipeout to be wiping out that much. Maybe use the text mask for that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Or
Just explode the block.
Yeah, I can just blow.
oh yeah, explode my block. Yeah, I dare you. I dare you. Yeah. See what happens when you try to explode it. Just so you guys know, most of the blocks that I've created here do not have explode capability. And nobody knows the workaround, right? So we'll leave it at that. So yeah, that's a very good question, and that's as you guys use these blocks, let me know if you absolutely need it to follow each line. I'd say, okay, maybe if it's a one-off type of situation, let's use the text mask. If it becomes an issue, maybe we create another block with grips for each individual line. I just think that's a little too much drafting to adjust that grip for every single line of text. The point is to make it more efficient, quicker for you guys. Yes, Amy?
Is there a way, like if you did all of your, call outs with the wipeout and then you find one that you want to change, can you change it out or do you just have to delete it and start? You know what I mean? If you end up having one that has a little line, you're like,
you can't there's no, there probably is code that could be written to do that, but it's going to be kind of a one-off situation where I'd spend more time writing the code than it'd take you just to replace the 4 lines of text. So I'm going to tell you, don't be so lazy that you can't replace 4 lines of text. There's always going to be a need to do some drafting, but we do want to minimize the amount of drafting, right? We want to be as automated, as efficient as possible. So let me know what's more efficient for you guys. If you think it'd be more efficient to have a grip for each line of text, okay. Personally, if I was drafting, I wouldn't want to individually have an individual grip for each line of text. I don't want to be there sitting doing that. All right, so new annotation blocks for you guys. So already talked about updating the blocks in your drawings. So for those of you that may want to switch out your blocks, let's say you have a drawing with 100 of these guys, right? And you want it to replace it with the wipeout ones, let me know. Because I can, within 5 minutes, I can do that for you with a Lisp and a script. So basically what happens is we rename these to the new one that we want to replace it with, and then we run that Lisp file, and it will replace them all, and it will update everything, and you'll have the wipeout. So that can be done.
And then back to that, what if you come to a project and the original drafter had all with no wipeouts, but you needed to start putting wipeouts on about half of them? Is there a function to do similar to that where you just go and pick which ones you need rather than all of them? Because sometimes you don't want to wipe them out for whatever reason. I mean, perfect world, that would work beautifully.
We could. It would be pretty difficult. It'd be a lot easier to just replace them all. When you start getting into custom replacement, it gets a little bit more complicated. It can be done, but it would be a time investment. So it just kind of, you got to weigh those things. If it's easier and better just to replace them all, I'd say let's just replace them all. There is a way that we could do that. So if you run into that, let's talk and we can write something. Cool? Any other questions on those blocks?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Do you have a library or a list that kind of, I'm sure there's what, 500 different list routines that you have, so that
good question.
so you can easily find, like, I need something that changes the colors of all my polylines or whatever.
So I'm sure you guys are all aware of the NV5 tools, right? And this wonderfully titled icon called Program Library. This is actually the list of NV5's LISP routines. Oh, right? You've all used that. You know what that screen looks like, right? So it's a pop-up window. It has categories. So it'll say like text. You click text and it will list all the LISP routines associated with text. If you click on each LISP routine, on the right-hand side, it will give you a description of what it actually does. You have that. However, that database was, we were basically told we could not spend the money to continue to update it. So that got dropped in about 2013. All right. So anything that I've done, that's basically the reason why I started the San Diego folder. So CAD Lib, LISP 2013. You're exactly right. If you look at this, there's 746 items in this folder. And they're not always described very well. Like, all right, I get what that is. Change case. That's going to change case of your text, right? CHMM? I got nothing, right? I got nothing. I don't know if that deals with a block, text, a line. I have no idea. So that's why I created the San Diego folder to help kind of isolate ones that we like, particularly here in this office. And then inside this, we've got them all kind of, oh, these are all the ones that deal with a block. And then basically what it does. Or layers, oh, and then what it does. So we've kind of done that. And that kind of brings me to the next topic of, I'm actually starting to document and provide guidelines for some of our workflows, because that's very lacking here, in my opinion. So say somebody is unfamiliar with how to do a survey database. We're now going to have this document to hand somebody and say, this is how you create a survey database. This will walk you through pretty much step by step of how to bring up the survey tab if it's not there, how to edit your zone for your survey database, make sure you're set to the correct survey feet, using the right survey figure prefix database. It's going to walk you through all this stuff. There's also one for list routines. So this is what that window looks like, right, for the program library. You'll see blocks here, the list of routines, and then a brief description here. So I'll kind of give you pre-2013, and then I've actually started to kind of at least create a matrix of common ones that are applicable to most people in the office. And then the thing that I want to kind of build is individual group list routines. Like the gas group. All right, here's 5 list routines that we're going to use or that we need to complete our drawings. I want each group to start populating a list of list routines that they find useful for their workflows. So these are specific to the gas, you know, to block redefine, to update their blocks in their drawing, to edit that title block globally, to do a vertical exaggeration and profile, how to measure an angle between your lines at a vertical exaggeration, right? So we need to call out, hey, that's a 4-degree bend. Well, how do you measure that at a vertical exaggeration in your profile? Using this list routine. Kind of piggybacking on that, we want to then have those LISP part of our tool space as well, right? So now you no longer really have to go hunt for them. They're all right here. So this one is part of the DD profile, SDG&E DD. This will update all your DD annotation blocks. Just click that little icon, or it's actually a macro, and the LISP routine loads and runs. All right. So those types of things we want to add for each group. Michael.
When you make updates to the tool palette, do we have to update them by ourselves or is it automatic?
Yes and no. Tool palettes is literally the one thing in AutoCAD that does not play well on a corporate IT point of view. It's hit or miss on machines, to tell you the truth. Usually when I do major updates to the tool palette, I'll kick out a new list basically for it. So just kind of come here to edit tool palettes, import, and load it. Again, you may have to come see me for this path, but it's Q Civil 3D 2013, E&U, support, tool palette, palettes, exported palette groups, and then you'll see the group. Pain. I hate tool palettes in terms of trying to manage them. You can see the last update on the T&D was September 29th. There's not a really good way of kicking it out, unfortunately. I wish there was, but it's one of the things that is very nebulous inside AutoCAD in terms of how to update those and manage those. All right. So yes, list routines, we have some listing there. I'm working on some others, but let's go ahead and build up a team group of lists that you use, and let's add them to the tool palette so that they're a little bit easier to find and use. If there's ones that you find are applicable to the majority of the people in your group or that you just use every day, let's add them to the startup script so that they're actually available to everyone. Like DDV, right? You guys know what DDV is, right? To set up, to rotate your plan view according to whatever you want. That's a list routine. It's NV5 specific, or one that we use. I don't think we actually created it. But you don't have to load that, right? You never have to go AP and then find the list for DDV, right? It's part of our script that loads up. So if there's things like that you find using every day, let me know and I can just add them to our startup list so that they're available as a native command to AutoCAD. All right? We have several like that. DDV, INA, ISC. Those are all LISP routines that are become native commands inside your AutoCAD because they're auto-loaded. I think the last thing, second to last thing I want to talk about is annotative text scaling. My personal recommendation is not to use annotative text. I personally don't find it very efficient or productive. You may have different experiences, and I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying just be mindful of how you're using it. Possibly the most effective use for annotative text is your contour labels. A lot of times those labels get given to us by the error list, right? And a lot of times they're just regular text, right? There are times where it would be nice if those labels were annotative so that it would change according to my drawing scale. So in those cases, it would be great. Just keep in mind when you do that, your text needs to be justified middle center because you want, that's your control point on that text, right? Is your middle center, and as the text gets larger, you want it to scale up from that middle center. So it's always aligned on your contour. And that's my major gripe with annotative text, is that it's dependent on where you want that insertion point to be. And that insertion point is different for every single annotation scale, right? So have you ever seen that where you have annotative text and you have like 4 different locations of that text? It becomes very hard to use, and that's my main gripe against annotative text. So just be aware of annotative text. Make sure you're using it appropriately, that you mean to use it. Don't be creating annotative text just because it's there. Typically text that I create, it's not annotative. So when it says annotative, typically we'll say no. But there are times where you will want to use annotative text. Vic?
So how do you control the text height for different viewports with different scales on the same sheet?
Good question. So there's a couple different ways. In those cases, annotative text may be exactly what you want to use, right? If it's something that isn't necessarily dependent on that same call out, there's cases where, yeah, you want that text, I don't want to have to retype that 2 different times at a different scale. I want that text. Yeah, by all means, use annotative text. But sometimes, hey, it may be better to have separate text on different layers and different sizes. So it kind of depends on what you're after. If it's a detail, your detail may actually have separate text than what you're showing in your plan view. So yeah, you wouldn't want that to be annotative because you're going to freeze it in one viewport and keep it at this other detail viewport. So just kind of keep that in mind. Just be aware of your annotative text. Don't create annotative text if you're not using it for different scales. It's just lit on your files, right? Because it's then sizing that text for every viewport. It's going through all those processes. So just be aware of how you're using annotative text. All right? And the last thing that I'm going to cover today is layer states. So hopefully we don't have to make too many changes to our layer colors and line types. They should pretty much mirror our base files, right? But a lot of times, for instance, something that I'll do is my EXUT. I'm going to have my EXUT, I'm going to have my water lines be blue. I'm going to have my sewer be magenta, my storm drain green, right? But then when I go and XREF that EXUT into my plan sheet, I don't want those colors. I want it all to be screened back, right? Or maybe a little darker on the sewer, depending on what I'm doing. This is where layer states can come into play. So what a layer state is it basically takes a snapshot of the layers inside your drawing and saves them. So this is very important when you hand off files to maybe other drafters that maybe aren't quite experienced with the layers and colors that you're using. It's a good way of keeping a snapshot of how the drawing looked at a particular date, right? So let's say this drawing here, Layer Manager. This button right here is your Layer State Manager. So I'll click on it. There's no layer states currently in this drawing. Let's create a new one. So I'm going to call it EXTO, and then I'm going to give it the date, right? I'm going to save it. So I just created a layer state, right? So what that did is it took a snapshot of everything in here, and it's retained in that layer state. So let's say somebody's in my file and they start changing layer colors for one reason or another, right? Everybody see what I did there? Are you guys using that command? CC, right? I showed Amir this the other day. So let's say I want to change this layer color, right? Or better yet, let's say it's an XREF, right? Because then it really gets pain in the neck to change. So let's say this was an XREF, and I wanted to change that layer color. I'd have to go in here, type XList, right? Select the line, figure out what XREF it's in, what layer it's on, go to Layer Manager, navigate to that XREF, try to find that layer, and then change it, right? What a headache. If only there was a better way. Again, CC. This is a LISP routine that's loaded automatically because I think it's about the coolest command there. All you have to do is type CC, select the line or the layer that you want to change, and then type whatever color you want. And it changes that layer color.
It works within XREF.
And it works within XREFs, works within blocks, works everything.
Wow.
What was that, Amy?
I was just going to ask about words within a block or next.
Yeah,
Mhm.
works, yeah, wow.
As long as that block, as long as the line work inside that block is on layers and not like your zero layer, that type of stuff. So somebody changed that, right? And obviously when I go to plot this, then my drawing has all these dark lines on it. And I go, what did they do, right? Not a problem, right? Because my drawing has a layer state. Somebody did undo one too many times. So we'll recreate that layer state, right? So we have our layer state. Somebody comes in here, changes this layer color, and let's make it real fun. They also change this one. right? I go to plot, and wow, my project manager goes, geez, do you even know how to use AutoCAD? Not a problem. All I got to do is go to my layer state, hit the one I want, hit restore. Back to the way it was.
So if you undo, it'll erase the layer state that you made?
Yeah, of course. Just like any undo.
So would you advise saving after you layer state?
You wouldn't have to. Just I hit undo a bunch of time. One of the issue with that CC command is sometimes you have to regen between the commands updating. It's kind of like line types and points. Sometimes after you make changes to your point groups or the styles, you have to regen before they take effect. I hit undo one extra time, so it wiped out my layer state. Typically, I would create a layer state at major mile marks of your project, right? So when you make that first maybe progress print, I'd make a layer state so I know exactly how my layers were at that point in time. I'd make a layer state for every submittal. So first submittal to my client or to the agency, I'd make a layer state so that my drawing, I can always go back and plot exactly like that point in time. Yes?
So what's the difference between that and archiving another file? Like, you know, so
the layer state is active in your drawing. So you're going to always be working on this file, right? So changes are going to happen here. They're not going to happen in the archive file. I want to use this file that's a living document, but I want those plot settings. I want my layers to plot like that all the time. It's a way of really enforcing the way things are plotted at a very easy, customizable, accessible way.
How do layer states work with viewport? You know?
So they will actually, they contain viewport overrides as well. So if you make viewport overrides or if you freeze layers in the viewport, it will actually bring those in as well to that viewport. The other thing that's cool about layer states is, let's say you're not going to have your entire plan set all in one file, right? You're going to break it up amongst several files. If I have 60 plan sheets, those 60 sheets aren't going to be in one file, right? I'm going to have maybe 6 different files. My layers should be identical amongst every file, right? All my plan sheets. Well, I can then export or import this layer state into all my other files, and now my layers are consistent across all my files, across all my sheets. That's going to be a major benefit to you guys if you're doing a lot of plan sheets in multiple files. You can make sure that everything is set uniformly across your entire plan set. All right? So that's a quick overview of layer state as well. All right? This month, in the next week or two, we're going to be focusing on providing a lot of training to you guys. Carmen authorized some budget to do that. So probably in the next week, I'm going to send out an email kind of getting some feedback on what kind of training you guys would like. Please respond with kind of your votes or what you would like to attend. We'll probably do some in-house training here presented by US CAD. They've got some different courses to go over, be it basic AutoCAD, basic Civil 3D Essentials, some really good classwork. So if there's things that you're interested in, just kind of respond to the email so we can kind of judge the number of people that want to attend these classes and kind of budget accordingly. All right. So we're going to be trying to focus on training a little bit. That's why I'm starting to document some of our work procedures. If there's work procedures that you think should be documented, let me know. I'm kind of just started going through and kind of going, okay, survey database, yeah, we need something like that. Point groups, we need something for that. As we get more specialized into individual workflows, I may rely on you guys to kind of add some points, you know, some procedural, this is how I do it. We really need to document things. It's going to be better for new hires. When we hire somebody right now, we don't really have much to give them outside of, here's work, do it. How efficient is that? What would you feel like coming into that environment? So if we have a little pamphlet or 20 pages of this is how we do certain things, it's great benefit. The other benefit is similar workflows within the work groups. Like our power group for just, let's say, underground trench design differs between the design teams, right? That's not a good thing. We should really have one way of doing things so that Ivan can jump in, the project that Gary's working on and doesn't have to learn the system that he's using. It should be a unified approach to a project. And right now we've kind of grown to the point and we're seeing some divergence in our workflows. We kind of want to bring them back and kind of do the same thing so that every plan that comes out of this building looks the same. Our client knows what to expect, because that's what the client wants from us. They want a certain product the same way every single time, right? So we really need to focus on delivering that, and one of the ways is to have the similar approach and the same procedure. So Scott put together a distribution design kind of training manual. We started one for gas. We'll be expanding that. We want to incorporate all the groups, all the design efforts. So if there's something that you see in AutoCAD, let me know. If you see something in your own work group, come talk to me, and then we'll kind of talk and kind of see, you know, hey, what can you do? What can you add to it? But those are going to be kind of key points to growing and becoming a better design group and company. So you can start to see I'm starting to put things together. NV5 CAD data manager, drawing settings, NV5 logo, that's a big one. I need to cover that. LISP Routines, survey database, survey figures, point groups, and then some specialty stuff like we're using our Colorado Springs office to actually do aerials now. And so this actually walks you through to kind of help convert what they're doing into the way that we expect it. So there's a whole write-up on that. Write-up on how to convert files from Civil 3D to MicroStation. We have to do that quite a bit. And one about licensing. So anything that you would come across, we want to have some documentation. So we're going to make an effort to really start doing that. Let me cover logo for those still left. Our logo. What does our logo look like as an AutoCAD block? Just NV5, right? So you're probably all working on drawings that have all kinds of different logos, right? You'll have one that says NV5, Nolte Vertical 5 Company. You'll have one with just NV5 Beyond Engineering. You'll have a bunch of different ones, right? There's a new logo now. It's basically the same that it's been for the past 2 years, but the main difference is the address, the text style for the address. Who has actually been able to read that once it plots? Pretty horrible, right? So to help update that, there is a LISP routine now in the San Diego folder called logo. And all you have to do is type logo. If there is a logo block in your file, what it will actually do is it'll rename it to what the current logo is and redefine it based off of our network approved logo. So I don't think there was one in here. So I'm going to insert it. Hopefully I remember where it is. I think I selected the right one. We'll find out. Come on, I'm not that boring. Jeez. So this is what the new logo looks like. You'll see that the text is actually legible now, as opposed to the stuff that it was before. You'll also notice that this is a dynamic block, so you can make modifications to it to fit whatever title block you need. So the major things, obviously, black and white versus color. Any rotation, if you need to rotate it, you know, to be along the edge of your paper, you can do that.
You can draw it blue if you want.
You can. I wouldn't recommend it because we're going to get charged for it. You can move the text if you need to move it down a little bit, or you know, fill up the gap or create more of a gap. You can do that. You can also size the text accordingly. This grip will size the text. So you can size the text as needed. And of course, all those properties are in the properties window. So obviously, hey, we want our text height, you know, maybe to be 0.125. So this is what the new logo should look like. It should have that text, which is a lot more readable or legible than what it's been in the past. All right? So run this list routine. I'll make it native to AutoCAD. It's called logo. So what it will do is it'll find any logo in your drawing and update it. You may need to make some changes according to the text size and position, according to what title block you're using. So just kind of be aware of that. If you have a logo in your file that logo does not update, please let me know. All I need to do is add that block name to this list routine, and then it will update. So I obviously don't know all the various logo blocks out there in the production world. I found the two probably most commonly used, but I'm sure there's a handful out there. So if logo doesn't work on your file, let me know so I can get that logo block name and add it to the list routine to update. All right? Thank you guys, and I'll be around if you have some questions.
Thank you.
How you doing, Jarrod?